My name is Ray Anderson. I'm the athletic director of Arizona State University in Tempe, Arizona.
Can you start by telling us what your leadership oath is, or your mantra, what you believe in, that the people you work with know you stand for?
That I live my values, and that I just don't spout out values and core values that we want for our organization, but in fact, I personally live them, which is ethics, communication, transparency, family first, teamwork, passion, compassion, all the qualities that I think a leader has to bring for a successful organization. I try to live those personally, and by doing so, all our people buy into it. That's my mantra.
Do you believe that people need to develop their own, or they need to follow some of your leadership mantras, I guess, to work for your organization?
Yeah, well, mine aren't exhaustive. Mine are just some fundamental principles that I've learned over the course of my 62 years now in life, and a lot of those spent in leadership capacity. So I expect people to also have their own core values, but as far as being able to work in our environment, there are some real fundamental core values that they really have to share, or else it's not going to be a good fit. And one of those is, very frankly, family first, work-life balance, because if they are able to accomplish that, then they're going to be better teammates and better partners and better employees in terms of what we're trying to accomplish as a culture, as an entity, as a business.
How do you pull that off in such a competitive business? Family first, and having them really live that mantra.
Because you enforce that it is important, and you also acknowledge that if they live a family first mantra and they take it seriously, then when they are at work with us, they're going to have the full support of their families, because their family knows when it's family time, they're going to have full support in terms of spending that time with family. So the selfish part of that is that not only do we get the employee, but we get every member of their family really behind what we're doing organizationally, because they know that when it's their time, they have it. But when it's the organization's time, they're going to support the family member who works for us in the most vigorous way, and it all works out.
Great. How does talk about positive leadership and how it drives business value or business results?
Positive leadership is just good business. And if it's not positive, it's going to be negative, and that's bad business. So positivity brings hope and aspiration and motivation and incentive to people. So there's nothing like positive energy to get positive results. And then if you're able to establish that as one of the things that is really important in your culture, it's infectious. And then the teamwork that rises out of a positive environment is at a much higher level, in my opinion, certainly than a negative environment, or an environment where people are kind of neutral about what their real feelings are. So positivity is the key, in my view, to ultimate outcomes, positive outcomes.
Speaking of positive leadership, during difficult times, how can positive leadership be leveraged to maximize performance and results?
During negative times?
Yes.
Well, that's when you understand that everybody's all in, and that good times are going to happen, but there are also going to be some bad times, and you figure out as a group with positive energy, how do you get through those bad times to at least make the opportunity to get better and to survive those bad times at a higher probability level. So positivity is really key to success. And if you let any of your management style be infected with negativism, then you really have failed, and very frankly, your business and your culture will fail. So positive is it, negative is something that you have to fight through, but you really have to make sure that it is nothing that lingers in your organization. And you just can't tolerate negative behavior or negative attitude or negative approach to anything in a successful business.
Talk about change. We know successful change initiatives have resistance. What advice do you offer in identifying and overcoming resistance and, ensuring that change is successful?
Yeah. Well, change is inevitable because if you're not changing, you're going to essentially go stale. Our view is that the status quo can always be challenged. Our view is that it's never good enough because it can always be better. It may be not perfect, but you still want to strive for perfection. So what we challenge folks with is that, change is positive. Change is for the good. Change is inevitable. So be positive about it. And we aren't of the mind, and I've never subscribed to the philosophy that if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Well, I think anything can always be made better. We can always change it toward the positive. You may have the most beautiful, shiny, vintage car, but it can always be made better through more polishing, a little more tweaking, maybe a little higher quality oil and filters in that vintage car. So our view is that change is inevitable, change is good. Don't fight change, embrace change because it gives you an opportunity to get better.
Okay. What's the importance of communication tools and tactics to drive positive change?
Critical. Communication and transparency. And part of strong communication is being a very strong listener as well. You communicate by listening, in my view, as well as verbalizing. So communication is, I think, critical, but it has to be honest, objective, open, transparent communication. There can be no wishy-washiness about it. There can be no reservations or hesitation about it. It's got to be affirmative. It's got to be honest. It's got to be clear. It's got to be objective. And it's got to be compassionate communication. That's the most effective way to do it that I've found.
On the subject of communication, communicating with others knowing that not everybody thinks alike or may not like your specific leadership approach, what techniques have you found in that area?
Purely honesty to say you want people to voice. And very frankly, if you have an organization where everyone thinks the same and speaks the same, then very frankly, you probably have too many people in the organization. So you want folks who are comfortable with challenging and offering different views and perspective because it forces you to, think through the unintended consequences. It forces you to think in a broader, more realistic way because everybody isn't the same. So we really encourage different thoughts, different thinking, and honest openness about it. Now, at the end of the day, organizationally, when we make a decision, however, then from that point forward, we want folks to be on board, to be supportive, to be in line, if you will. Once a decision that has been made collectively that we think is in the best interest of the organization, while you may have had a different view for purposes of the way forward, put that in the backside, let your ego calm down, and then go forward as part of the decision made by the collective group.
On the subject of negotiating, what are your insights or perspectives and advice on creating additional value while negotiating? How do you expand the pie, so to speak?
Yeah, I believe in the negotiating theory of win-win, which is I want to win, I want to get outcome, but I also want the person with whom we've negotiated to also feel good about the agreement that was reached. So I really look for the win-win result because I'm in a business where you will see very likely that person again or that business entity again at some way, shape, or form. So if the result in the first instance has been a win-win to some degree for both sides, it's going to be a positive way forward. And also, if you, in my view, have that kind of approach and philosophy about negotiations, the word spreads. People will spread positive, and so the next time you're negotiating with maybe someone completely different, if you have done it in an honorable, ethical, win-win way, that's your attitude, that's your approach, things tend to go better in your future negotiations, even with folks that maybe you didn't know. But I'm telling you, the world is such that a lot of people know what a lot of people do and how they manage and how they comport themselves. So in our negotiating strategy, and I've always had this, I want a win-win outcome because there will be additional opportunities, and that approach usually comes back to benefit you.
Definitely. On leading high-performance teams, what's the importance of being responsible and accountable to those around you, and how do you ensure this happens?
Again, you have to lead by example. You have to be one that walks the walk. You have to be one that really insists that folks do it the right way. And in the toughest times, you have to be one who steps up. You can't abdicate your authority. You can't delegate that and go hide. You can't put subordinates out there in front to take the bullets. As a leader in those toughest times, you have to be front and center. And if you do that, your teammates, your high performers, your modest performance, even your younger ones, inexperienced folks, will see that the leader is out there leading the charge, and it has a profound positive effect on your organization's morals and ethics, and I think just culture overall. So with high performers, particularly in difficult times, as a leader, you better be leading.
Mm-hmm. How does commitment, capacity, and character of team members drive results?
It's critical. If you don't have those characteristics, then you won't get results that are very positive, in my view. So I think character, ethics, morals, just tenacity, but also I always circle back to passion, but also compassion drives results, in my view. And you have to approach how you deal with situations as a leader and as aspiring leaders with those things always in mind.
Final question, what are you most proud of in your time in your role with Arizona State in terms of your leadership and creating whatever culture you've created? I know it's always a process, but what are you most proud of so far in that role?
That, in fact, our culture is accepting those core values that we talked about. And the thing I'm most proud of is that particularly our younger folks are inspired, they're encouraged. They, I think, feel a lot of hope and aspirations that as members of our team, they will be able to elevate and have opportunities because they have a leadership that really believes in development and succession planning and inclusion of all voices in our decision-making process. And I think that's really bearing some very positive outcomes for us, including younger folks who really feel that they have a succession plan, they have an opportunity to rise and be recognized in our organization. I'm very proud of that.